The rudders are all sanded and faired and looking pretty good now. I'm really happy with how they've come up. The good thing is that all I have to do now is apply some sort of a barrier coat to it prior to putting the anti-foul on. Now I could just put anti-foul on, but it's very important to note that epoxy is also porous, and the chemical composition of epoxy is very different to barrier coat. I don't have any barrier coat on hand, and to do a small amount of the rudder like that, I think, it'll probably end up costing me a couple $100 just to get enough to do the tips of those rudders, because the remainder of the rudders have already been barrier coated prior to the anti-foul being applied back 18 months ago when we launched the boat. But I just so happen to have some tank guard. Now, Yacht tank guard is a potable epoxy paint that is waterproof, and it will suffice as a barrier coat. It's not the ideal situation. I certainly wouldn't be using it on the entire hull of a boat, but to do the tips of the rudders, and particularly because they've already been made with epoxy and several layers of epoxy, and there's epoxy fairing compound in them and everything as well, I think I've got plenty of protection there already, and it will avoid any sort of chance of osmosis if I apply this to the tips of our rudders. Now, the other thing too is I don't have any black anti-foul left, and I don't want to go buying black anti-foul right now, because potentially at the end of this year there's a good chance I'm going to need to re-anti-foul the entire boat. So I do happen to have the blue that we started with, so we're going to have blue rudders on a black hull, and that's going to look pretty funky, but within a couple of days it'll be slime all over them anyway. So the fact that I've got plenty of Yacht tank guard left, I had hordes of it when I did our water tanks and our black water tanks, so that's working perfectly for that purpose. I don't see any reason why I can't use it as a barrier coat. I'll just have to let it set up for the day and then come back tomorrow and give it a sand to etch it and remove any amine blush off it as well, just so that I don't have any off-gassing into the anti-foul when I apply that tomorrow or the day after. So that's going to be a great solution. It's a 2-to-1, nice and simple, and I'll just brush it on, and then I'll be able to give it a light sand tomorrow and get it finished. These look just so good now. There's probably a 30% increase in depth, not so much area but depth, just to give them that little bit of extra grip. I've got this one all set up here. Now I don't have any black anti-foul left, so I have the blue that I used back here, and I'm more than happy to have blue rudders because you can't see them anyway. Well, you can only see them when you look under the boat, but this blue is what I've got. That was left over from when we did the hull, so we used half of a 10-litre container to do the entire boat, so it's 5 litres per layer, and we used a full tin to do the other 2 layers of black anti-foul. So I'm going to do 2 coats of anti-foul. In fact, I might even do 3 on these rudders, and they won't be needing doing for a long time, and then it's a bugger all that we need to do the rudders. So I'll get them done now. I've just given it a good mix up. Got to mix all of the ablative together to make sure that you end up with a good mixture there. It's very important to use a drill. You don't just stir it because it's a waste of time, and we'll get these ones done. A week's work, part-time work. It wasn't all full-time. Doesn't take a whole week to fix a couple of rudders, but over a period of a week I've been able to manufacture a much nicer rudder blade, and definitely a little bit more grip, and it all boils down to 10 minutes of painting, and that's first coat. and they're looking pretty flash, so I'm pretty happy with them. That's step one in dealing with our weather helm issue. It's actually going to give me a lot more control over the boat as well, so I'm pretty happy with that because it was a little bit spongy. Our hydraulic steering already doesn't have a hell of a lot of feedback, so the more bite I can get, the better with our rudders. But yeah, they're looking pretty good. They're not perfect, but they certainly are as good as they were, so I'm pretty happy. I'll just get another coat on them, and then maybe another coat, and then we'll take them down the boat and fit them. Righto, they're now done and ready to go back on the boat, which is pretty pleasing. I've just got to make sure that I get a copy of the blade shape so that I can work on our spare rudder at some point. I'll probably carry the spare rudder as is for now. At least it'll get me out of trouble, and then I can always rebuild it should I ever need to, but at least I've got something that'll work as a rudder in the other side if I ever hit anything with one of these. But anyway, they look really fantastic. So happy to see them all antifoul. They've got 3 coats of antifoul on them, so there's plenty of ablative on there to deal with. Now it's time to get on to the tender. Alright, yesterday I finished the internal laminate inside the boat. Pretty much all the laminate's done for the inside now. All I need to do is put in some sort of a knee or some type of bracing on the side here just to brace up the roof or the deck itself. I've made up these 2 panels here which I intend to glass into the end of the boat. I'd like to get them done today if I can, so that section's done, so that I can then put the deck on. So the deck part is complete. It's basically ready to go straight on. So as soon as I glue it onto the top here, if I can get these laminated in this afternoon, I'll be able to get this glued on, and then tomorrow come in and start to laminate the deck and hull join, thereby covering over this conduit, the sail track conduit, and also being able to get the bottom one done as well, and then I can start to work on the fairing and sanding process, and then undercoating and painting. I've got these items called a tenor bung, which has actually got a purge valve in it as well. I intend to put one here and another one over on the other side there. And that will mean also, because these walls will be glassed in here, any water will always flow to the lowest point of the boat. There's nothing worse than water going into the back section. These will have a large round hatch on them so that I can store stuff in the back there, and also act as a little bit of buoyancy. I won't be putting a lot of weight in there. Pretty much the anchor will sit up in the well up in the front there, and then the fuel tank will sit just underneath that seat. Forward brace, I'm going to call it. I'm not going to call it a seat. I'm not really sure it'll ever get used as a seat, probably more as a step than a seat. But yeah, at least it's going to give me a lot of options when it comes to storage. Now I've got a lot of storage along each side here underneath the decks, but I'll get these fitted and we'll go from there. Time to put some carbon into the mix here. It's very important that the transom is reinforced with carbon, so all the way around the join here to the remainder of the hull is to be reinforced with 3 layers of 200 gram carbon. And so important that I do this as a structural membrane of the actual back of the boat. That will actually tie the stern transom right into the back here. Although it doesn't need it, I'm going to put it in. Very important that I get this done before I actually put the bulkheads in. Once the bulkheads are in, there's going to be no access to this area here, and I don't want to have to ever access it again. So I'll whack that in now. After lunch I'll come back in and whack in our 2 stern bulkheads, and then by this afternoon I should be able to start shaping and considering to put the deck on. Okay, I just put in 3 layers of 200, so there's another 600 grams of carbon uni in the corners here. That's giving us a really nice tie into the transom area. Don't really need any more than that. There's plenty of glass there holding it all together. Bulkheads on the edge. Now I'm into putting in the bulkheads. I've just hot glued them in place. Just put a layer of 600 double bias. They don't need to be anything fantastic. And the beauty of it is I still have enough room in here to be able to finish out this hatch. I'm going to flow coat out this hatch in here. I won't paint it. I'll flow coat it out, and then there will be a large round access hatch here and another one on the other side to give me that storage that I'm after as well. And then I can act the shape of the deck once the deck gets in place, and actually take a template off the rear of the deck over here and fit the whole thing together, and then pretty much it's ready to put together. Yeah, laminated in. I hot glued, just put a couple little spots, and then I've done a Cabasil and resin mix just to do the filleting, and that's now all one piece all across there. And even better is I've got good access into here to be able to flow coat that component then out, use it for storage. So I'll let that set up overnight, come back tomorrow. This will have to be trimmed to suit the size of the deck. It was only Janet that walked in and said, don't you need to do this first? And I was like, oh yeah, one step ahead of myself. Occasionally I get that excited, and it would have been a bit of a challenge laminating that in with that lid in place for sure. So definitely good that she came down when she did, because I would have been in a bit of trouble. What I thought was going to take about 5 minutes, it's taken about friggin' an hour and a half to get this to match. But anyway, it's done. I'm not going to be able to glass the inside of the bulkhead until I put the hatch in, and I may never do it because I don't really need to, because it's fully integrated in now into the back of the bulkhead here. And as you can see, I'll be able to laminate up underneath it, but I'll rarely be able to get inside there until I put in that hatch. So look, chances are I'm never going to do it. That's it, it's back together again. 3 weeks later, I've got the deck back on after doing all the other things I've been involved in. But yeah, nice to get that to match. It's pretty much ready to join, except for, very importantly, I need to flow coat out the inside compartment in here, because that's the one area that is not going to be painted and faired. The rest of it will be all painted out inside, but this is the tender as it stands, and it's looking really fantastic. I love the shape of it. I think you know, provided it handles the water all right, we're in a good place. Flow coating out these compartments, pretty simple. It's just pour it in, get your brush in there, and just basically flow coat it out. Paint as much as you can. Obviously I just had a piece of crap stuck in there. I did vacuum it out, but just flow coating the whole thing out. Always do the floor first, or you end up with it all up your arms. Alright, that's about as good as it needs to be. As I said, a big round hatch here. It's going to allow me access into those compartments, and the full tabbing will be underneath this side. I can't get to this side, but it will be epoxy glued all the way around. I've actually made sure that it fits pretty nicely. Okay, it's time to join the deck and the hull together, and it's going to consist of a layer of 300 CSM and a 600 double bias and peel ply over the top. I've already done this side. What I also do is make a filler of cabosil and resin and fill it and make a bit of a radius on each sides of this conduit so that it sits neatly and doesn't actually raise up. Very important to do that to make it nice and neat. Because otherwise you'd end up with a gap in here, and I don't want any air in here, because this is going to be held in by the glass. It's not glued in place. The glass is just simply holding this in place, and ultimately it's only going to be holding a cushion anyway, so we'll see how that goes. Should be good. And over here, this side's already done. it's all peel plied and laminated and looking really nice. So hopefully by tomorrow I can rip that off. The whole boat is now one piece, and I can essentially start to work on the fit out. In fact, I do need to do exactly the same thing down here on the lower conduit as well. Very important too is I plug the end with plasticine so that it doesn't get any resin in there. We don't want to have a problem with resin blocking our tube, because then the sail track won't work. But yeah, what a job, eh? It's been a big job. Okay, and the final thing that I needed to laminate on the boat to date is the final tie-in with the carbon unis across the bottom of the transom there, just to join the structure to the hull. It's already laminated on the outside. I mean, there's absolutely seriously no issue with anything being compromised on this boat. It is as tough as nails. Unfortunately, a little bit heavier than I would have liked. However, when I'm out on the ocean, I'm zooming around on this and it's banging against whatever, I can be confident that this thing is as robust as it needs to be. I can walk all over the deck without any support underneath it. And sometimes, yeah, I've had to over-engineer it, and without going to a ridiculous amount of expense and work, I've been able to produce something that's really robust and quite substantial, and I think it's going to be a cracker of a tender. So time to get it all painted up, sanded up, bit of fairing compound on the deck, fairing compound down on the side here once I sand it all down, and we'll be in business. Over the last week, there's been some serious progress on this guy here. It's now joined. The conduits are glassed in, the deck and hull are joined. I've got a small bit to do up on the nose, which was a bit difficult to reach, so I've turned it upside down to get this done. So as you can see, all the conduit has been glassed in. That just needs a really nice fairing sand and some fairing compound on it. And to be honest, we're not even going to worry about painting this area here too much, because that's not going to be seen behind the foam bolster that we're putting on. Yesterday we had a sit in it, and it is as strong as houses. This thing, it's probably a little bit heavier than I thought it was going to be, but it was always going to be. The carbon has been tied in to the transom that actually wraps around, and of course it reinforces it, and then also the bulkheads have now all been totally glassed in. So there's really nothing to do now other than join the balance of just down on the nose in there, right down at the bottom there. I just need to do that, then I can start to fair and obviously move on to paint. I do intend to put in a couple of braces inside, and also some attachment points obviously for the tender lift, so that we can lift it up onto our davits. Not really sure how I'm going to do those yet. I'll probably put first the two mounts up there where the carbon's already reinforced up there. I will actually add 2 loops of Dyneema there so that we can lift the boat from the transom, and then the other 2 will be down here, down near the seat here, and that'll basically possibly lift from the seat itself. So I'm not really sure how to do that. I might lift it from the actual deck, but we want to make sure that we have the best lifting points. So I'm going to measure the davits tonight when I go home, and then I'll be able to start on those once I get all of this joined done. But it is looking really cool. I'll just show you a little bit of footage here of a couple of photos here of Janet and I testing it yesterday. It was quite funny, and we were sitting in here imagining screaming around in our tender at about 20 knots. Darren's just showed up and we're testing the tender's stability. Go on, go a bit harder, mate. Come on.
I'm the crash dummy.
20 knot waves. Wow, that is not going anywhere, is it? Climb on, mate. Climb on the back step here. Oh, on you get. Look at that. That is not going anywhere, is it? That is so cool. Brilliant. It's not light. Never was going to be. No, but it'll never break. That looks so cool. There's one thing for sure, building a tender is not a glamorous thing, and probably not great for trending on YouTube. And I've just finished sanding the entire thing down. I'll now move on to fairing, but there's one more job I've got to do before I can actually really get into the painting and the final finish, and that is this. There is an exposed core that runs all the way down here and on the inside here. So what's very important is that I core this with, I'm going to use polyester and Cabasil filler just to fill this slot down here so that I don't ever get any water ingress into here and delaminate it. Oh, this tender is so tough, it's not funny. I have actually laminated over the top of this, but to do this along here is going to be a messy job and it's going to take forever, so it's easier just to pump some Cabasil and put some peel ply on it and sand it down, and I'll get a nice rounded edge, which is sort of desirable on the inside of a tender when we're shoving things underneath. We'll be shoving cushions underneath, fenders probably, mast snorkels. We don't want to catch our hands on these rough, sharp dags that could eventuate from, a rolled glass edge like this. However, that is pretty good, and now I'm starting to wonder why. But anyway, I've just got the oscillating tool. I've just been in here with the oscillating tool, and I've actually cleared this whole shebang down here, and basically now I can just fill it with some Cabasol and polyester, put some peel ply on it, round it off, get it all sanded nice and smooth when it sets up in a few hours, and then we're basically on to fairing. And it's a pretty good outcome, and I'm about a week away from having to have this thing finished, painted, and then we start tearing the factory apart to get on with our life cruising. That's bloody exciting for us. And Janet is very excited. She's still working away on the cushions. We're trying to get all of that done. I've got about 14 little jobs I want to do in the period we're moving out of the factory. Small jobs, little laminating jobs. I just want to tidy up the boat. I want to build a couple of protective tender fenders, I'm going to call them, which are little protective covers for the back of the sugar scoops, because we're ramming into it with our tender, and even with a rubber tender or a Hypalon tender, we're actually marking it. I'm going to put some nice little black bits on the back there. I kept a mould from my sugar scoop extension, so I can just easily do that. That'll be a couple of hours work and that'll be done, and a couple of other minor jobs. But the main thing is tomorrow we're going out sailing for the day. We're going to bring the boat up to the wharf. I'm then going to take the solar arch that I built over there. So the big, ridiculously big solar arch is going to have to make its way down to the wharf, and I'll have a test fit and get the lengths of these uprights, these supports. I'll get them correct, and then I'll bring it back up here to the factory and weld them, polish them out, and then we'll make the final fitment on the boat on Wednesday morning. So yeah, all happening. It's a very, very busy little spot at the moment.